You hate Vince McMahon. I mean, a lot of people hate him.
Yes, that's why they leave.
That's why they leave.
A lot of people have left.
I mean, when did you start hating him? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, I was always skeptical of his integrity. Let me put it that way. I think you join the company knowing that, like, okay, I know the guy's a rat, but
but you have to work
here. It's like you have to sign. You have to, and he was the sort of the big man on campus when wrestling. He was the only guy that could really
put you over.
Do the most for you in this industry anyway at that time.
I don't know Vince McMahon, so I've never worked for him. I mean, he's a sponsor of the show. He's never said a bad word about me, and and I don't know anything bad about the guy. But just to play devil's advocate here, could it be a case of sour grapes, that you couldn't get what you wanted and then you just got upset and bitter? I know sometimes ex-employees get really angry, this kind of thing. I mean, is it bad?
It's not really like that. I've always had high regard for him. I think he's got the most creative mind in wrestling. You know, and
he seems to be a great entrepreneur.
He's just a guy that he has no integrity. I don't think he's.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. It's hard to understand.
It's kind of you have to sort of deal with everybody that's ever worked for him. I mean, so many people that have worked for him, you always know, that he's going to kind of screw you in the end. I think it's.
I've worked for a few guys like that.
The philosophy, I think, for him is that no matter what you do for him, or no matter how hard you work for him. Like for me, I worked for him for 14 years. I always try to think of somebody that, in a comparable way, as far as what I did to wrestling or what I tried to do for wrestling, and I think of, like, say, Cal Ripken or something like that.
Right.
I worked over and over and over, and I was 5-time world champion.
You were very loyal.
And I did everything I ever could. I couldn't have worked any harder for him, and I always thought it was recognized and appreciated, and he always told me it was recognized and appreciated.
So when did the break come?
And then he just squished me like a bug in the end and kind of discarded me.
Well, in other words, after 14 years, you probably have to go in and negotiate a contract like any performer, and you went in to ask for money. I would imagine. I'm imagining this would be the rift. I mean, would he not pay you, or would?
I went into a situation where I became like a free agent, if you can believe that, in wrestling.
Right.
And I got offered to go to the WCW for double the money.
Right.
And I turned down $1.5 million extra to stay loyal to this creepy Vince McMahon.
Right.
And I thought it was appreciated, and I said I felt that he couldn't put a price tag on the friendship and the loylogy I had with his company.
And you probably felt, hey, that's the biggest game in town. You want to play for them, I've
been with them for 14 years. I had all my, even to this day, they have all my footage, all my pictures, all my.
They own all that.
They own my career. They
That's
got
right.
a time capsule locked up in a big.
They own your history. You don't have any rights
to it.
Right.
And so I wanted to stay. I didn't really want to go. And 9 months later, he told me that he was going broke. The company was going broke, which is a lie.
Right.
And that they couldn't afford to meet my contract. And then he urged me to go back to the WCW to go and get my old, this offer that they laid out before. I think he did that assuming that they would say, well, that was a year ago. We don't have, and then I would be left renegotiating with him for a lesser amount. But they immediately accepted and offered me pretty much the same deal.
So they've been generous with you, the WCW.
WCW has been great with me.
They're good people.
They're good people.
That's Ted Turner's company?
Yeah, and they're honest.
Right.
But
totally
that's pretty
honest.
funny to get a guy, he's trying to get himself into a better negotiating position, and he sends you off to another company?
Right.
Well, I think there was some kind of, I never understood the tactics or the reasons for where he was going, but I know in the end, I did pretty much everything he asked for, with the exception that I wanted to leave. I had one match in Canada, and it was a situation where, in wrestling, ultimately the good guy needed to win this match. Otherwise, I would really have a lot of egg on my face. And he basically gave me his word and swore that that wouldn't be a problem. And I went in the ring, and they screwed me right in front of the whole country. And
made you lose?
Made me lose. Maybe had the guy put me in my hole just as I was it was supposed to be a thing where I was just getting out of the move.
Did you think that he orchestrated? In other words,
I know it. It's all told in this documentary.
But wait a second. They work out in advance who's going to win. I don't think that's any secret.
Right.
No.
All right. So everybody knows that. It's theater.
Yeah.
So they work it out. You get in the ring, and all of a sudden the gameplay switches?
Yeah.
Right in the middle of the match, they ring the bell and say I lost. And I thought,
why would
14 years, everything I've done for this guy.
They didn't have the balls to tell you up front that you were going to lose.
Right.
No, they did. It was specifically done. I mean, it was done strictly
to humiliate
me and squish me like a. Because let's be honest here. I left the company to go work now. I'm doing, like I said, did it as a favor to them. But I'm going to another company where I'm going to get paid more.
Right.
And I'm reluctantly going, but it's not a bad deal.
Right.
But just how they treated me in the end, it was...
So you still had some time to work for them before you switched over?
Yeah, I had 30 days.
That's when it happened.
Oh, I see.
So needless to say, at the end of that match, I did knock out Vince McMahon.
Did you, for real?
Now, for real, you punched him out?
I broke 2 bones in my hand, and I knocked him out cold, and he went down.
Wait. I got to understand this. So this is you're talking about a real fight. You're talking about a real deal. This was televised?
No, but there was this documentary crew that was following me around.
So they have it on tape.
Well, they don't have the knockout punch, but they have him coming out of the room after I punched him, and you can certainly tell he got punched.
So you walked up to him. You were so angry, and rightly so, that the game plan switched. He was standing there. You walked up. Did you say anything?
Well, I'll tell you what happened was I had gone to the dressing room, and he had locked himself in his little room.
Right.
And then I stormed off to my dressing room.
This is like the real show.
I didn't think I was going to see him.
Right.
And you have to understand, he's not a small guy.
Right. Is he a tough guy?
No, he's not a tough guy.
But he's built up.
But I think he likes to imagine he is.
All right.
And
I need to see this footage.
A lot of the wrestlers, I think, were really upset.
Yes.
I meanwhile took a shower, and I was just getting ready to blow out of
Because if it happens to you, it could happen to anybody.
I was really, I'll tell you, I was shocked and crushed. I couldn't believe they would do that to me. And,
right.
So anyway, I guess some of the wrestlers rounded him up and chased him out of his office and told him to come down and explain himself in the dressing room. And so when I came out of the shower...
At least he had the balls to go down there. Yeah.
Yeah, at least he had the balls to come down there.
Right.
And he came into the dressing room, and I had just finished taking a shower. And I did have a funny vision of myself rolling around punching out Vince McMahon naked.
In your birthday suit.
You want to have some clothes on.
I don't want this, if they ever do a movie on this, let's do it right, let me put some clothes on. So
you put clothes on for the event.
I told him, I said, I'm going to dry off. I'm going to get dressed.
It's hard to hit a guy when you're naked.
Yeah, you don't want to. He's right. You don't want to get into a rolling around on the floor situation naked with a guy.
Loose parts.
Yeah, you can get kicked in the nuts. Yeah, go ahead. So you get dressed.
I said, I'm going to dry off, and I said, if you're still standing there, I'm going to knock you out.
Oh.
And, as soon as I dried off and tied my shoelace, I stood up and I walked over, and he sort of came toward me. You have to understand, he was surrounding me with about 4 or 5 of sort of like his henchmen. All pretty big guys, too, all ex-wrestlers and stuff.
Bodyguard types, yeah.
And I had my brother and my brother-in-law and a couple of people that were there to at least make sure that nothing
happened to
crazy
you.
happened.
Right.
And I knocked him out cold with one punch.
One punch?
One punch. I hit him in the jaw like an uppercut. And I actually blacked his eyes. And I remember he went down like nothing. And then they scooped him up. They picked him up by his shoulders, sat him on the chair.
Right.
And I remember he was like shaking his head and going, like blubbering kind of thing. I never sat there, and I really was in shock. I kept thinking, I can't believe I just knocked out Vince McMahon, my boss. And then I stood up and I said, get that piece of shit out of here.
Really? Did you feel better?
Oh, yeah. And they picked him up, and they actually dragged him out to the door where his feet were like dragging. And that's when the video camera outside with this documentary crew picked it up. And apparently I've always been overjoyed to hear that he hated so much to be seen. He hates to be seen weak, I guess, Vince McMahon. So when they showed him being dragged down the hall,
like a woman,
that he wanted to buy the documentary, buy the whole show, buy anything it is, and have it'd be shelved somewhere and it'd be with my other tapes.
And his something else he wouldn't own. His bodyguards didn't jump on you.
No,
they allowed it to happen.
Yeah,
in a way that's kind of weird. And
well, it wasn't like he was alone either. So it was another group of big guys. They would have had to get it on.
Why do you think he stood there when you told him you were going to punch him out? Did he probably think you wouldn't have the balls to do it?
Maybe.
That was probably
maybe
it.
That, or maybe
just wanted to get it over with.
He's also the kind of guy that might have fancied himself as kind of a tough guy.
Yeah, he couldn't back down.
That he thought maybe, or that maybe it might get into kind of like a couple. We're pulling each other's jackets, or or maybe. I'll never know. I'll never know why the hell he screwed me in the first place. I worked much too hard for him.
And you haven't seen him since you knocked him out?
No, well, I did see him. I saw him the day after, the day before my brother's funeral, where he was his classic scum self. He met me on he pleaded and begged with me to meet him all week long after my brother passed away through the course of the week. And I have such harsh feelings for the guy, but I kept trying to overlook that. And so I did talk with Martha's lawyers, who were in effect at that time, helping with making decisions. And they said, whatever you do, don't talk about the case. Right. Don't talk about the case. You can talk about anything else, but. Right. So I did meet him on the day before the funeral, and I asked him a little bit about the case. And I said, basically, he said, you don't know any more than what the newspapers know. And he said, no, I don't. And I said, well, there's no sense really talking about that then. And then I asked him about why he screwed me over.
Right.
And I went into that in quite detail. Though. So I hadn't spoke to him since he did it, and I wanted a straight answer on that. And he did get one. He told me it was the biggest regret he ever had and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And then I asked him about why he carried on the show.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if it bothered you that the show went on.
It bothered me immensely that the show went on. And mostly it bothered me from the standpoint more that they made the poor wrestlers go out afterwards. There's one wrestler that was very close with Owen that was being basically pushed out through the curtain to wrestle as they wheeled my brother past him. Ooh. And I thought the whole thing was so cold-blooded. And his logic, of course, is that there was going to be a riot and stuff like that. And I always think, I give wrestling fans a hell of a lot more credit than that. I don't think there would have been a riot or anything like that.